We search for answers in the darkest corners of history. If you have a curious mind, welcome to Chronicles of Curiosity. Subscribe now and join the investigation. In the winter of 1922, on a remote Bavarian farmstead, an entire family of 6 was slaughtered with a pickaxe. But this story is far stranger than a simple home invasion. The killer didn't just murder the family and flee into the night. They stayed. For days they tended the farm, ate the family's food, and slept in their beds, all while the bodies of their victims lay just feet away in the barn. This is the story of the Hinterkaifeck murders and a phantom killer who, after living with the dead, simply vanished. Deep in the German countryside, about 70 kilometers north of Munich, lay the isolated farmstead of Hinterkaifeck. The name itself, meaning behind Kaifeck, was a testament to its seclusion, tucked away behind a small hamlet and bordered by dense woods. This was the home of the Gruber family. The patriarch, 63-year-old Andreas Gruber, was known in the nearby villages as a difficult and abusive man. Living under his control were his 72-year-old wife, Cecilia, their 35-year-old widowed daughter, Victoria, Gabriel, and Victoria's 2 young children, 7-year-old Cecilia and 2-year-old Joseph. The family was already a source of local gossip. Dark rumors circulated about an incestuous relationship between Andreas and Victoria, which had even resulted in a court conviction. But in the months leading up to March of 1922, the darkness surrounding the farm grew more sinister. A series of strange and unsettling events had begun to unravel their isolated existence. It started 6 months earlier, when the family's maid abruptly quit. She was certain the house was haunted, claiming she heard constant footsteps and disembodied voices from the attic. Andreas dismissed her fears, but soon, even he couldn't ignore the strangeness. In early March, he found a newspaper from Munich on his property, a paper no one in the area subscribed to. He assumed the postman lost it, but no one ever claimed it. It was as if it had simply appeared. Then, just days before the murders, the feeling of dread escalated. Andreas told neighbors he'd discovered a set of footprints in the fresh snow. They led from the edge of the forest directly to the farmhouse, but bafflingly, no tracks led away. It was as if someone had walked out of the woods and simply dissolved into the walls of the house. Later that week, the family heard it themselves. The distinct creak of footsteps from the attic floorboards above. Andreas searched the entire property but found no one. To make matters worse, a set of house keys vanished. Someone, or something, was lurking at Hinterkaifeck, watching them. Despite these terrifying signs, Andreas refused all offers of help and never once called the police. On the afternoon of March 31st, 1922, the new maid, 44-year-old Maria Baumgartner, arrived for her first day. Her sister walked her to the farm, stayed for a short time, and then left, becoming the last known person to see any of the residents of Hinterkaifeck alive. Within hours of her arrival, Maria would become the 6th and final victim of a massacre that still defies explanation. With no hard evidence, the case dissolved into a labyrinth of theories. Who could commit such a monstrous act, and why? An early theory focused on Carl Gabriel, Victoria's husband, who had been reported killed in action in World War I. Since his body was never recovered, some speculated he had survived, returned to discover the family's secrets, and committed the murders in a jealous rage. This idea was fueled by claims from German prisoners of war, who said a Soviet officer had confessed to being the killer. However, this theory is widely dismissed, as several of Karl's fellow soldiers gave sworn testimony that they saw him die in the trenches of France. A far more compelling suspect was the neighbor, Lorenz Schlittenbauer. He was the one who led the search party and seemed suspiciously familiar with the farm's layout. He had an affair with Victoria and was widely rumored to be the biological father of little Joseph. His behavior during the discovery was also strange. He entered the house alone after finding the bodies and disturbed multiple crime scenes. In the years that followed, he made odd comments hinting at knowledge only the killer would possess, like noting that the murderer's attempt to bury the bodies in the barn was likely stopped by the frozen ground. Despite deep suspicion from locals, police never had enough evidence to charge him. Other theories pointed to a robbery, but that was quickly ruled out when a large sum of money was found untouched in the house. Some believed vagrants were responsible, which might explain why the killer stayed to eat and rest. And given Andreas Gruber's tyrannical reputation, a personal revenge plot from a slighted neighbor or a former farmhand remained a strong possibility. Every lead, however, turned into a dead end. For over a century, the phantom of Hinterkaifeck has remained at large. The case was officially reopened in 2007 by a German police academy, but even with modern profiling techniques, they concluded the crime was unsolvable due to the lack of evidence. They did, however, reportedly agree on a primary suspect, but have never revealed the name out of respect for living relatives. A year after the murders, the entire farmstead was demolished, erasing the physical site of the tragedy. Today, only a small memorial shrine stands where the house once was, a quiet monument to the 6 lives so brutally taken. The story of Hinterkaifeck endures as one of Germany's most horrifying and mystifying cold cases. It's a chilling tale of a crime where the killer not only took 6 lives but stayed behind to live amongst the dead, before vanishing back into the shadows forever. What do you think really happened on that isolated farm? Was it revenge, madness, or something darker? Drop your theory in the comments, and if you're hungry for more disturbing cold cases and unsolved horrors, check out the Chronicles of Curiosity playlist. Link in the description and on screen now. The exact timeline of the murders has never been confirmed, but forensic investigators pieced together a terrifying possibility. The killer likely lured the family into the barn one by one. First Andreas, then Victoria, then the elderly Cecilia, and finally 7-year-old little Cecilia. They were ambushed in silence, each struck in the head with a mattock, a tool meant for breaking soil, now turned to slaughter. Young Cecilia's death was the most agonizing. She didn't die right away. Her autopsy revealed that she survived for hours after her injury, likely alone in the dark, terrified and in pain. When her body was found, her small hands were filled with clumps of her own hair, torn out in agony. After the barn massacre, the killer moved into the house. The maid, Maria Baumgartner, was murdered in her room, and 2-year-old Joseph never even woke up. The killer ended his life as he slept in his mother's bed. Thank you for watching Chronicles of Curiosity. If you enjoyed this mystery, subscribe and turn on notifications for more unsolved cases and chilling stories every week.